Nothing in history happens without consequences. The rise of Hitler, along with Mussolini and Emperor Hirohito, they together led to the death of almost 85 million people, and also the Holocaust of which involved millions of deaths of Jews. But from that devastation emerged something new, a new global order, creation of United Nations, and a global order that ensured reasonable level of peace for last 80 years. But history never stands still. We are once again we are approaching a turning point. Half the world is already entangled in conflict. Ukraine, Russia, Iran, Israel, US, Lebanon, and the Gulf states. They are the front line. They are involved directly. Europe is also deeply involved. China and India are economically involved. In reality, अगर हम देखें तो almost the entire world is now part of the same geopolitical storm. When so many powers collide at the same time, one question becomes unavoidable. Are we witnessing the birth of a new global order? To understand this, we need to look at 10 critical points that, that are shaping this world. Now, despite इतनी एयर स्ट्राइक हुई ईरान पे, there are no confirmed reports of Iran shooting down any American or Israeli aircraft or missile. तो फिर इसराइल ईरान की जो बोला जाता था कि उनके पास चाइनीज HQ-9 एयर डिफेंस सिस्टम है और S-400 एयर डिफेंस सिस्टम्स है रशिया के, उनका क्या हुआ? हैव दे ऑलरेडी बीन डिस्ट्रॉयड सारे के सारे? हैव दे फेल्ड? Or is Iran deliberately holding them back? Now, we all know कि आज की air wars today begin with long range, beyond the visual range missiles and drones. लेकिन if the conflict drags on, तो जो stronger power है, in this case US and Israel, जब उनके एयर सुप्रीमेसी अचीव कर लेते हैं, तो दे में इवेंचुअली मूव टू लार्ज स्केल यूज ऑफ ग्रेविटी बॉम्बिंग, द काइंड ऑफ डिस्ट्रक्शन वी सॉ इन गाजा. तो दैट रिक्वायर्स एयरक्राफ्ट टू एंटर द एनिमी एयर स्पेस. नाउ दैट कुड बी द मूवमेंट Iran probably is waiting for, because that is when hidden air defense systems could suddenly appear and deliver a painful surprise. Otherwise, air defense systems कोई caves में रखने की चीज तो है नहीं. Second, Iran knows one thing very clearly कि वो realistically it cannot strike US mainland. वहां तक तो उसकी कोई मिसाइल नहीं पहुंच रही. तो वो अपनी स्ट्रैटेजी उसने शिफ्ट करी. क्या किया उसने? Instead of attacking USA itself, what they are doing is it is targeting American bases across the entire Middle East, Gulf states, Saudi Arabia, Iraq. Why? Because sustained attacks on US air bases वो बनाएगा, it would make the war costly and economically unviable for US. क्योंकि सारे ये जो छोटे छोटे किंगडम्स हैं, दे विल स्टार्ट आस्किंग फॉर पेट्रियट्स, एयर डिफेंस सिस्टम्स, एंड दिस वुड क्रिएट पॉलिटिकल प्रेशर इनसाइड अमेरिका व्हेन द वॉर बिकम्स इकोनॉमिकली अनवायबल. हिस्ट्री शोज कि वॉर्स विद नो क्लियर एंड इवेंचुअली बिकम पॉलिटिकली अनसस्टेनेबल, जिसका कोई उद्देश्य ही सामने नहीं दिखाई दे रहा और कोई एंड नहीं दिखाई दे रहा, so it would eventually become politically unsustainable. Now, as a result, the battlefield is expanding. According to the Wall Street Journal, Iranian drone strikes have targeted radar and communication systems in Qatar, UAE, Jordan, Bahrain, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia. So this means that the war is no longer confined to one country only. It is spreading across the entire region and thereby making it economically unviable for USA. Here comes a crucial connection: the war between Russia and Ukraine. Ukraine gave up its nuclear weapons and strategic missile systems decades ago under security assurance from the West. They gave it to the erstwhile USSR or Russia. Yet today, the war continues between Russia and Ukraine. And Putin has shown little interest in compromise. So, how do you pressure Russia? One way is through Iran, its key strategic partner. Iran has supplied combat drones, military technology, and crucial cooperation. Iran also helps Russia bypass sanctions and supports projects like North-South Trade Corridor, जो कि रशिया को एक्सेस देता है towards the Indian Ocean. In other words, weakening Iran could indirectly pressure Moscow as well as China also. What if the Iran war actually helps Russia? And this is what is happening. Higher energy prices benefit Moscow. And also global attention in this war may shift away from Ukraine. And if America becomes trapped in another Middle Eastern war, it weakens US strategic focus. So United States pressures Russia's ally, Iran. Russia pressures America's and Europe's ally, Ukraine. Result: both superpowers bleed each other through proxies. Now, anything that complicates US power projection improves Moscow's strategic position. And so it is in Moscow's, perhaps, interest to prolong the war as much as possible. After all, the bleeding जो हो रही है वो दोनों के proxies की हो रही है. Now, after the Cold War, the world experienced decades of overwhelming American dominance. But US influence remained unmatched all these years. Washington used its power relatively carefully. लेकिन अब global system now appears to be changing since the rise of Donald Trump. Many observers believe that the world is increasingly looks like a US dominated system, as if it's a colony managed by US. At the same time, major arms control frameworks are collapsing. The START treaty, Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty, which was signed between US and Russia, it was allowed to lapse in 2026 without renewal. And the institutions like the United Nations, they appear weaker than ever. So, this war is unlikely to end soon. China and Russia would not mind seeing America bogged down and tied down in this region. But for Iran, the stakes are even deeper. This is a 5,000-year-old civilization, और अब जो है, its national pride is now at stake after Mr. Trump's demands that have been placed on it. So, जब nation, when it begins fighting for a civilizational pride and self-esteem, the wars rarely end quickly. The conflict has already crossed disturbing lines. Reports speak of school children killed, almost 115 strikes. An Iranian ship which was returning from a goodwill visit was reportedly sunk in international waters. Iran has reportedly used cluster munitions over Israel. So war often begins with strategy, but they quickly descend into emotion, anger, and revenge. And so civilians, जो World War II में हुआ था, वैसा ही होगा, will have to bear the brunt of this war. Already many have lost their lives and millions have been displaced. Actually, Iran knows it, and it is not trying to win this war in the traditional sense. उसकी strategy simple है, it appears to be endurance. Absorb the punishment, retaliate when possible, and avoid the collapse. And wait for the political fractures to appear within the opposing coalition. That is the US and Israel led coalition. Gulf states have already started complaining against US कि उसका main focus is on guarding Israel than them. लेकिन एंडोरेंस के अपने लिमिट्स हैं. ईरान के पास finite number of missiles हैं. Launchers are hunted, production lines are attacked. But the same pressures affect on Iran's opponents also. Even Israel's air defenses are not perfect now. We have seen it. Every missile that gets through the Israel air defense system increases the public anxiety, and they are suffering losses. They've already suffered almost 20 billion losses in the 12-day war last year. Saudi Arabia and Gulf states need to ask themselves that how long can they sustain this? And the United States will have to, at some point of time, calculate the cost of escalation, the energy shocks, and prolonged military operations. लेकिन अभी के लिए both sides believe that the time is on their side. But both cannot be right. And here is the most important point. Iran does not necessarily need victory in the traditional sense. It only needs to remain standing and deny its enemies their achieving their two main objectives. That अब अगर if Iran survives this confrontation intact, something far larger could happen. The balance of power could shift, and the US-led global order that shaped the last 80 years may finally begin to fade.
And if Iran is unable to withstand the onslaught or pleads for a ceasefire, Trump and United States will get emboldened, and then the major part of the world would have to accept American hegemony. And as someone said, all US wants is a client state.
Thank you. Jai Hind.